Imagine a queen who, with her beauty and cunning, made the most powerful men in the world bow at her feet. She was the world's most beautiful and secretive queen, Cleopatra. But Cleopatra's real power lay in her intelligence and secret plans. From her love stories to her political maneuvers, every story is a secret that the world is trying to understand till date. Let's unravel the untold secrets of this most secretive queen of ancient Egypt. To know the truth behind Cleopatra's life and her legacy. Cleopatra, 7th, ruled ancient Egypt as a co-ruler for almost 3 decades. First with her grandfather, then with her 2 younger brothers, and finally with her son. She was part of a dynasty of Macedonian rulers founded by Ptolemy, who served as a general during Alexander the Great's conquest of Egypt in 332 BC. Cleopatra was not only educated and intelligent, rather she was proficient in speaking many languages and was the prominent ruler in all her co-ruler periods. It is difficult to understand Cleopatra's biography with accuracy due to the lack of any contemporary details about her life. Born in 70 or 79 BC, Cleopatra was the daughter of Ptolemy, who was also called Oletus Ptolemy. Ptolemy was a descendant of Ptolemy I Soter. Ptolemy I Soter was one of the generals of Alexander the Great and is considered the founder of the Egyptian Ptolemy dynasty. Cleopatra's mother was Cleopatra V Tryphena, who was the wife of King Ptolemy and possibly also his half-sister. After the natural death of Oletus in 51 BC, the throne of Egypt was handed over to 18-year-old Cleopatra and 10-year-old brother Ptolemy XIII. Soon after ascending the throne, Ptolemy's advisors started plotting against Cleopatra, due to which she had to leave Egypt and flee to Syria in 49 BC. There she prepared an army of mercenaries and returned the next year and faced her brother's army in a civil war at Pelusium, situated on the eastern border of Egypt. To strengthen her position, Cleopatra tried to get the support of Julius Caesar, for which she quietly reached Caesar's palace and was also successful in putting her point across. Relationship of Julius Caesar and Cleopatra. Julius Caesar needed money to re-establish his power in Rome, and he wanted to repay the loan taken from Rome by Oletus by conquering Egypt. For 4 months, the war continued between Caesar's weak army and Ptolemy XIII's army until the Roman auxiliary forces reached Mahan. Ptolemy had to flee Alexandria and is believed to have drowned in the Nile. Caesar entered Alexandria as a popular conqueror and restored Cleopatra and her younger brother Ptolemy XIV, who was 13 years old, to the throne. Caesar stayed with Cleopatra in Egypt for some time, and around 47 BC, Cleopatra gave birth to a son who was named Ptolemy, Caesar. It is believed that this was Caesar's son, and the Egyptians knew him as Caesarion, or Little Caesar. Between 46 and 45 BC, Cleopatra went to Rome with Ptolemy XIV and Caesarion to meet Caesar, who had already returned to Rome. On March 15th, Caesar was assassinated by some senators during a Senate meeting in the Curia Pompei, in the Theater of Pompey in Rome, where he was stabbed 23 times by some senators, killing him. Ptolemy XII soon died, believed to have been carried out by agents of Cleopatra, and the 3-year-old Caesar was then named co-ruler with his mother as Ptolemy XV. By this time, Cleopatra had associated herself with the goddess Isis, a tradition in ancient Egypt where royal families were associated with deities to enhance the fortunes of kings and queens. Cleopatra and Mark Antony's relationship as co-ruler with her newborn son. Cleopatra's grip on Egypt was stronger than ever. Yet, floods in the Nile River were destroying crops, due to which inflation and hunger were increasing. Meanwhile, a fierce conflict was going on in Rome between Caesar's allies, the Second Triumvirate of Mark Antony, Octavian, and Lepidus, and his assassins Brutus and Cassius. Both sides sought support from Egypt, and after some time, Cleopatra sent 4 Roman armies, which were stationed in Egypt by Caesar to support the Triumvirate. After defeating the armies of Brutus and Cassius in the Battle of Philippi in 42 BC, Mark Antony and Octavian divided power in Rome. After this, Mark Antony called Cleopatra to Tarsus, which is located in the south of today's Turkey, so that she could explain her role in the complex circumstances after Caesar's assassination. Cleopatra reached Tarsus on a grand ship. She was wearing the dress of Isis. Antony, who identified himself with the Greek god Dionysus, was fascinated by Cleopatra's charm. Antony promised protection of Egypt and Cleopatra's crown and supported the assassination of her younger sister and rival Arsinoe, who was then in exile. Cleopatra then returned to Egypt, and Antony soon followed, although he left his third wife Fulvia and their children behind in Rome. During the winter of 40 to 41 BC, Antony spent time in Alexandria, where he and Cleopatra formed a famous drinking society called the Da Enimi Table Livres. After Antony returned to Rome in 40 BC, Cleopatra gave birth to twins, Alexander Helios, the sun, and Cleopatra Selene, the moon. Power struggle. After Fulvia's death from illness, Antony had to prove his loyalty by marrying Octavia, Octavian's half-sister, in a court marriage. Egypt became more prosperous under Cleopatra's rule, and in 37 BC, Antony met Cleopatra again to obtain funds for his long-delayed campaign against the Parthian Empire. In return, he promised to return parts of Egypt's eastern empire, including Cyprus, Crete, Cyrenaica, Libya, Jericho, and large parts of Syria and Lebanon. Antony and Cleopatra then became lovers again, and in 36 BC, Cleopatra gave birth to another son, Ptolemy Philadelphorus. After the humiliation in Parthia, Antony publicly proclaimed Caesarion, rather than Octavian's adopted son, to be Caesar's son and legitimate heir, and granted lands to his children, with Cleopatra as rewards. This declaration infuriated Octavian, and a propaganda war began between him and Antony. Octavian alleged that Antony was completely under the control of Cleopatra and was planning to abandon Rome and establish a new empire in Egypt. By the end of 32 BC, the Roman Senate had stripped Antony of all his titles, and Octavian declared war on Cleopatra. Defeat and death. On 2 September 31 BC, Octavian's forces inflicted a crushing defeat on Antony and Cleopatra at the Battle of Actium. Octavian and Lepidus's second triumvirate and his assassins, Brutus and Cassius, were engaged in a fierce conflict. Both sides sought support from Egypt, and Cleopatra soon sent 4 Roman legions stationed in Egypt by Caesar to support the triumvirate. After defeating Brutus and Cassius' forces at the Battle of Philippi in 42 BC, Mark Antony and Octavian divided power in Rome. Mark Antony then summoned Cleopatra to Tarsus in southern Turkey to explain her role in the complex situation following Caesar's assassination. Cleopatra arrived at Tarsus on a magnificent ship, dressed in the robe of Isis. Antony, who identified himself with the Greek god Dionysus, was fascinated by Cleopatra's charm. Antony promised protection of Egypt and Cleopatra's crown, and supported the assassination of her younger sister and rival, Arsinoe, who was then in exile. Cleopatra then returned to Egypt, and Antony soon followed, although he left his third wife, Fulvia, and their children behind in Rome. During the winter of 40 to 41 BC, Antony spent time in Alexandria, where he and Cleopatra formed a famous drinking society called the Da Enimi Table Livres. After Antony returned to Rome in 40 BC, Cleopatra gave birth to twins, Alexander Helios, the sun, and Cleopatra Selene, the moon. Power struggle. After Fulvia's death from illness, Antony had to prove his loyalty by marrying Octavia, Octavian's half-sister, in a court marriage.